And it's a joy to be back with you again. One of the special features in the June issue of Guide for Spiritual Living, Science and Mind magazine is a wonderful feature on none other than Karen Karsh.
I didn't send you your checklist.
And since it's our third annual special edition on pets, we also feature Faulkner as well. So Falky is ready for his close-up, and he looks just amazing. So thank you for saying yes, Karen. And I would just add to that showbiz adage, never follow children, pets, or Karen Karsh. And yet here I am. So thank you. We bless Reverend Jo T. on her Sunday off, knowing that she's getting rest and being rejuvenated, and she continues to serve your community in such bold and brilliant and powerful ways. So I join you in sending love to Reverend Jo T. and Mary. You know, as I was thinking about what I wanted to share today and how we may engage in conversation, it struck me that I don't necessarily have to recreate. You know, how many times in your life have you done something and then it came time to do something similar and I have to do it different and I have to recreate it and I have to reinvent it, and maybe you don't? What if life was meant to be easy? What if we all had our own easy button and sometimes we just forgot to use it? So I followed a bit of my own counsel as I was reflecting on my letter in the June issue, and my title for that letter that I wrote those many months ago is on Paps, Pride, and Pets. And you know, I did make it to that day of ministerial school. I'm all about the alliteration, so that just spoke to me. So regardless of what I shared with Jo T months ago in the bulletin, that's what you're getting today. And what that means for me is Paps is what we called my paternal grandfather. So that is the Father's Day for us. And as I was referencing what Ernest Holmes had to say about fathers, it struck me in the concordance that shortly after the word father, and there are any number of entries, as you can imagine, for any number of reasons, but shortly after the entry for father, there is fatigue, followed by fearless. And so I too add my voice to all of the fathers and the amazing father energy in the room and on the planet for all that you do, because I know that parenting is the most important job that we can do. And I bless people having that experience. And you know, it also dawned on me, as was shared, I'm getting ready to head to a reunion, and as I speak with my friends and high school mates and colleagues, and you know, thank goodness for Facebook and social media, it's fascinating to me the myriad of names that my women friends have for their grandchildren to call them. You know, it's this whole spectrum. And they are lovely, and you're probably aware of many, and perhaps you have a unique name that only your giant souls with short legs call you. And I just thought that was amazing. And the thing that struck me is we even had that in my own family. My grandmothers were just Grandma, as in Grandma Pauline and Grandma Mary. And my maternal grandfather was Papa Scotty, and my paternal grandfather was just Paps. I think it had something to do with Pabst Blue Ribbon. I'm just speculating, you know. So this is P-A-P-S, and we just called him Paps the whole time. And Paps was a New York Jew who met my grandmother, a Roman Catholic Colorado girl, in Black Hawk, Colorado at a barn dance. And so, you know, we are, of course, in this community all about inclusivity and honoring everyone and everything, except perhaps for that darn tradition that did us wrong as we were growing up. But that's another Sunday talk. But, you know, a Jew marrying a Catholic was a big deal when they got married on St. Patrick's Day in the early 1920s. And so fast forward then, being, you know, the Goldberg clan being so welcoming and so inclusive, I was the youngest of 3 boys. And my mom said to my dad after I was born, it doesn't make any difference what tradition, but these kids need to be raised in a tradition. They need to have that anchor. They need to have some kind of connection to a higher power, to their own divinity. And my dad said, great, they're Jewish. And my mom said, I'm fine with that. So she marched us off to the synagogue. And the rabbi had just a couple of questions for her. Are you Jewish, Mrs. Goldberg? She said, oh, no, sir, I'm happily Lutheran. And that was kind of the end of his questions. Because as you may be aware, in Judaism, you are what your mother is. Because in the olden days, as the villages were being pillaged and the women were being raped, they may have no idea who the father is, but if your mother is Jewish, you're Jewish. So that was the end of our brief experience with Judaism. So then we went to the Lutheran church, as my mother was raised in the Lutheran tradition. So I'm born, short digression here. My mom had her appendix out the day before I was born. And they said, do you want us to get him while we're in there? And she said, no, he'll come out when he's ready. So they invaded my space. So at 4 o'clock the next morning, I was out of there. Anyway, I digress. So I was there, but I really don't remember. But I was told at my baptism, so my mom and my dad were both only kids. So their way of honoring and creating their own family of choice was to make all of their close friends godparents to us for being a spiritual but not necessarily religious family. So my oldest brother had 3 godparents, my middle brother had 3 godparents, and I was about to have 3 godparents. So we're standing at the altar, or they are, and I'm in my mom's arms, I assume, and the minister goes through this whole beautiful service, and he's looking around this circle of people, and my mom is holding me, and the minister is just a joy, and he closes his Bible at the end of the service, and he looks around, and he sees my mom, who identifies as Lutheran, my dad, who identified as a non-practicing Jew, and 3 of their best friends, who respectively were Episcopalian and Catholic and Methodist. And so the only job of a godparent is, if something should happen to the child, to raise the child in the tradition that the parents desire, right? So this minister is just a little bit confused because, it was all about the choices. So not missing a beat, he closes his Bible, he looks around the circle, he identifies all these beautiful faiths, and he said, and that, my friends, at the conclusion of this service, I guess that makes us all Democrats. So what are you going to do with that? And it may or may not be the case, and we bless people of all political parties. So anyway, that reminds me of a good friend of mine who married a woman significant younger than he, and he had 2 or 3 kids by a previous marriage, and he and his new wife wanted, and this is a true story, he and his new wife wanted to have children, and they were thinking about it, and then all of a sudden my friend became a great-grandfather. Through all of the generations, we all know how that happens. And so I was having this conversation with him, and I said, so you're telling me that it is possible in your family tree that your great-grandson will be older than your son? And he said, yeah, isn't that awesome? And I was like, yeah, I'm glad I don't have to trace that family tree. Anyway, I digress once again. So Paps was a roofer. He was a hard-working man. He and my grandmother had my dad, who was an only child. And one of the things that sticks with me as I walk a faith path now is my grandfather and my mom were best friends for being daughter-in-law and father-in-law. And when my grandfather died, my mom reached out to the rabbi because Paps was a Jew. And, this was 1963. And the rabbi said, oh, no, bless you, but he married a Catholic, therefore I can't do the service. So my mom reached out to a priest, and he said, oh, no, heavens no. He's a Jew, and I'm a Gentile, and I'm sorry, I won't be able to help you. So she reached out to this amazing Lutheran minister who baptized me, who honored all the faith traditions. And he said, oh, honey, I love you, and I wish you the best, and that's really not my place to do that. And so here we were with this amazing man of God, the words that have been spoken so beautifully by so many this morning, and yet no member of the clergy would come and honor him in his transition. So fast forward again to a few months ago. I was asked to do a memorial for a young man in his late 20s. He married a Vietnamese woman. They were actually in Vietnam doing work with her family, with their little toddler, with their 2-year-old. And he had an accident, and he fell off of a ladder, hit his head, and he died. And so they did a service for him in Vietnam. They all came back here. Mom and Dad are from here. They happen to be divorced. Mom is Mexican and still has family in Mexico. Dad lives in Denver. So we're having this interesting family conversation about what the memorial will look like for this young man. And at one point, we get to the point of the conversation where they say, we would love to have the Lord's Prayer. I said, that's beautiful. I love the Lord's Prayer. They said, we would like the Catholic version. I said, that's beautiful. I know that. And they said, we would love to have the Lord's Prayer in 3 languages. In English, in Spanish, in Vietnamese. Because they were doing simulcasting, they were doing Facebook Live to Vietnam and to Mexico City. And I said, that's extraordinary. I bless you and I honor you, and I am more than happy to do that. And please let me be clear, I struggle with English on my best day. So as long as other people want to do that, I'm more than happy to include that in the service. And as I was doing my meditation before assisting the family with that service, I was just in that space, and I called in my grandfather. And I said, Paps, you had 3 people decline you for your service. I do this with 3 language in honor of you. So I invite you into that space of who have you closed out of your heart? Who can you invite in and forgive and move along that path? As Kathy mentioned so beautifully, the second P in the alliteration, we did Paps, now we're talking about pride. June happens to be the month where there are a whole lot of gay pride celebrations around the world. They happen at all times during the year, but the majority of them happen in the month of June. And it was just interesting to me. Years ago, I was with a friend, it was not planned, but I just happened to be in LA during one of their gay pride celebrations. And on that particular Sunday at 3 or 4 in the morning, LA had one of their earthquakes. And we're in a 23rd floor apartment and the bed is shaking. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. I didn't put in a quarter. And and the whole building is wobbling. And then everything, all of the media just starts going crazy, depending where you're at on anywhere along that spectrum. Some folks on the right are saying, this is God's curse, and God says we have to cancel all the gay pride parades in California. And I'm like, God bless you. Good luck with that. And on the other end of the spectrum, all the gay folks are saying, this is God joining us in celebration. So it's all about perspective, right? It's all about the lens that we choose to look through. I had the opportunity to see Denver's pride activities in a different way too. As a young gay man, I kind of showed up at my first parade in a hat and glasses and really hoping nobody would ever see me, not recognizing that they were probably there for the same reason, regardless of where they are on the orientation spectrum. And then my second opportunity was as a vendor for a nonprofit agency. The parade goes right down Colfax, and we had a business that opened onto Colfax. So we were selling water bottles, and we were selling lemonade, and I didn't have to think about that piece of it. And then a couple of years ago, Rick and I were invited to ride in a car in the parade. And it just was a different experience. And I was really clear that it's not because I'm extraordinary, although I own that, and we all are. It was because of my position within Centers for Spiritual Living. And Rick got us bubble guns, and we were just having a great time in the parade. And then a year ago today, so let me back up. We got married on January 1st of 2017. And then a year ago today, we celebrated our reception with 200 of our closest friends. And it was just fascinating. We had those who came and celebrated with us, and we love you, and how can we support you in your relationship? And we also heard from people who said, well, why would you do that on Gay Pride weekend? And again, it's all about perspective. We did have the conversation, we did acknowledge that, and we said, what better way to honor pride than to do that? So as I wrote in the magazine, I truly hope that we can come to a point where we celebrate all people every day, regardless of whom they choose to love. And then finally, the pet piece really speaks to my heart. We had mutts the whole time we were growing up. We didn't know what purebreds were. We had this one beautiful being. I have no idea what kind of dog she was. We got her in April, so her name was April. April was out running in the neighborhood, and April got pregnant, and April had 3 puppies. And oh my gosh, I didn't know much, but it looked like she got pregnant 3 different times. Anyway. And so each one of us got to name one of the puppies. And my oldest brother named one Shorty. My middle brother named one Zach. And I was about this high, and I named the little girl Linda. So to all Lindas, I apologize. But that is just that is what we did. Then I would bring you to my nephew and his wife and family who still live in Broomfield. They too are huge dog people. When we get together with my extended family at Christmas, there are usually about 15 people. In this past year, there were 11 dogs. And Rick had all of his over-the-counter meds because he loves them and he's allergic to everything. And I'm like, honey, do you have your drugs? And so we were in good shape. But they had a, what kind was, beagle. Dodger was a beagle, and they rescued him, and he rescued them. And he was 12 or 15 years old, and Dodger made his transition. And my niece couldn't stand it. She waited less than a month and found herself at the beagle shelter. And she fell in love. As soon as she walked in, she fell in love with this beagle. And this guy had problems. He, on his chart, they said terminal, and he was going to be put down the next day. And he had something wrong with his paws. If he was going to stick around, they thought that they would have to amputate at least 3 of his paws. And my niece walks in, and this is her dog. And they said, okay, let us be clear. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. You must go immediately to a vet if this little one is going to have any chance of surviving. So she did. She's a responsible pet owner. Took him right to the vet. The vet looked at him and said, this is going to be a challenge, but I think he's going to be okay. And so they worked with him and did everything that they could to save him. And Bo was doing great. And the vet that she took him to happened to be Dr. Jeff, who has the show Emergency Vet on Animal Planet. So they sent a film crew out to the house to check on Bo, to check on the family. And they also have a purebred husky who's, about this big, and this little beagle is about this big. And Bo is definitely the alpha. And so look for a special edition of Dr. Jeff Emergency Vet this fall featuring Bo Goldberg. So my nephew also, when they got the huskies, they're big Star Wars fans. So he named them Luke and Leia. And unfortunately, Leia had an accident with a car and didn't make it. So Luke was left. And then they adopted the beagle, and his name is Bo. And I said, pal, you went from Luke and Leia from Star Wars to Bo and Luke, Duke of the Dukes of Hazzard? He said, Uncle Dave, it wasn't planned. So on this beautiful summer day, again with the alliteration, I would invite you into I's cubed. For my mathematics friends, that is I to the 3rd power, or 3 I's, not to be confused with ice cube. Reverend Goldberg is enough, and you add rapper, and that'll just send about everybody over the edge. So here are the I's cubed that I would share with you on this perfect summer day. The first one is inspiration. Who inspires you? For me, it was my grandfather in so many ways. It was the way he showed up for his family. It was the way he chose to just work and do his thing. It was the way he chose to be spiritual and honor his own path while honoring his family. My dad said, as much as he loved both of his parents unconditionally, that sometimes he felt like an outsider in his own home because his parents' love was so strong and so powerful. So I invite us all into that. Ernest Holmes tells us, the great mystics have all agreed that man's life is his to do with as he chooses, but that when he turns to the one, he will always receive inspiration from on high. So who inspires you? Who can you look toward so you don't have to reinvent the wheel? The second I is ignite. What lights your fire? What are you passionate about? What moves you forward? What allows you to make your light shine? For Rick, it is all about fun, and I am so grateful. Whatever he does has to have an element of fun. It's not a consideration. I was just sharing, I'm so glad that Susan is going to be with you next week, and Susan and Karen, oh my gosh, bring your recorders. And while Susan is here, Rick and I are going to be at Center for Spiritual Living Denver, sharing the platform for the first time. God love Reverend Patrick. He called us and he said, so our theme is a fling with fun. You have to say that slowly and enunciate. And he said, I couldn't think of anybody better than you and Rick. So we're going to share the platform, and Rick is going to explore fun. So what is that for you? What ignites you? What is it that you might have gotten a bit of distance from? Rick uses the analogy, it may be jumping out of an airplane, but it doesn't have to be. Is it reading a book? When's the last time you read poetry? Who is somebody that you can connect with on this day that will help you reignite your flame and move that forward? And then the third piece I would say as part of our Eyes Cubed is invigorate. What makes life more interesting for you? What helps you along when you're having those moments? For me, it is meditation. It is that opportunity to be quiet. Because I love words, I love to read, I love to share, I so enjoy speaking. And this past week, the leaders of Unity International, of Unity Worldwide Ministries, were kind enough to invite a few of us from Centers for Spiritual Living to their international convention. So it was wonderful meeting new people and seeing old friends and connecting with beautiful musicians. And it was also great being on the campus of Unity Village and walking the labyrinth and having the deer appear. And honestly, not being a humidity guy, just being in my room in the air conditioning. And so that brought me joy. And I get to acknowledge that, and I get to be with that, and that is who I am, and there's nothing wrong with that. So what invigorates you? What brings you back to life? And, you get to do more of that. Again, Ernest Holmes tells us, there is always a calm flow of life, forever invigorating, forever renewing, and forever revitalizing. So in these dog days of summer, my friends, I invite you into I Cubed, inspire, ignite, and invigorate. Please join me in prayer. So in this moment, I am so clear that the only thing present is that which I choose to call God, but that goes by so many names. It is that one power, that one infinite source, that one divine energy in, around, and through all sentient beings. And I bless it. I allow it to support me because I know the truth that the universe is always conspiring for my good and that God always has my back. Especially in those moments when my human self may not be able to see it. So I step into that space of being invigorating. I step into that space of being energized because I am that perfect creature in whom God is well pleased. And as I know that for myself, I know that for every being in this room. We don't have to take another class. We don't need to listen to another talk. We don't have to share another podcast. We get credit just for being who we are and for being on this planet. So I bless all who are gathering in celebration today for whatever purpose, on mosques, in mountaintops, in churches, in centers, in temples, in teepees, in the great outdoors. Because what I know is God is everywhere. And it doesn't care how we choose to commune and how we choose to communicate and how we choose to gather. So I bless this experience. I bless this community called Center for Spiritual Living Boulder Valley. God is clearly present in this place. And each one of these delightful beings takes their amazing light out into the world. And they do, and they create, and they are, and they also allow themselves to be. For after all, we are human beings. And I bless all of our beloved pets who add so much to our lives. the four-leggeds, the fur babies, the crawlies, the winged ones, all blessed expressions of that glorious one power, one spirit, one presence. And I'm just called, my heart is called to speak a word on behalf of those beloved children who are being physically separated from their parents. I see the light of God in them. I see the light of God in all who are working every angle and every aspect of this situation. And I am not wearing rose-colored glasses. Rather, I am grounded in the spirituality that says, I know the highest and best outcome for all, regardless of what my human eye sees, regardless of what my human heart feels. As a spiritual being, that is what I can do. That is what I can offer. That is how I can engage and increase the vibration on the planet rather than being stuck in the muck, in the mire. So I hold that truth to be true. I love those beloved souls. I love the parents. I love all of those enforcing what appear to be laws at this moment. Everyone is doing the best they can. And I know that all are showing up as perfect expressions of the divine, regardless of what it looks like, regardless of what my judgment may be. So I just say thank you, Spirit. Thank you, thank you, thank you, beloved one that is in, around, and through. We bless all, including ourselves. I am forgiven. I am loved. I am healed. I am well. And together we say, and so it is, and so I am, and so we are.
Nothing is ever lost, and we are not forgotten. We are living in the heart of God. Nothing is ever lost, and we are not forgotten. We are living in the heart of God. You ready?